You'll forgive me if I begin with some thank yous, because I don't often get so many of our subscribers and our supporters in one room, and it's wonderful that we've been able to do this. We started Gript about 4 years ago with nothing, literally nothing. And over the course of those 4 years, we've been able to grow into something I think that is really significant. And I think the presence of so many of you here today, in conjunction with Free Speech Ireland, of course, shows that. That wouldn't be possible without the support of so many of you in this room. I know the impact that Gript is making. I know how much we're read inside Leinster House from people who would never dream of admitting that they were reading Gript. I know how widely we're read across the country, and I know how many people come up to me and say, I'm a secret Gript reader. There are quite a few of those out there. Well, I want to begin with some thank yous, because none of it will be possible without an amazing team. Our wonderful team of journalists, Ben, who has become a star in recent years. I want to thank him for all the work he's done, and also for in his speech just now proving the TikTok meme true, that men really do think about the Roman Empire once every day. I want to thank Fatima and Maria for their... There she is. And Liv. And people who maybe you don't know their names, but who we would fall apart without. They know who they are, Una. And then there's Noble, the greatest cameraman and videographer in the history of the world. Thank you very much. But this event is obviously about free speech, but as somebody who works in the media, I think it's about slightly more than that. Because if I had to come up with a diagnosis for the state of the country at the moment, I would say that the whole relationship between the governing class and the governed in this country is kind of fractured. Free speech is just one part of that. But it seems to me often that when you look at the people ruling the country and the people being ruled, the one consistent theme that runs through every strand of society at the moment is how little they like us. You eat too much. You drink too much. You drive too fast. You use the wrong kind of heating in your homes. You say the wrong things. You think the wrong things. You don't say the right things or think the correct things. And everything that they do has the overarching narrative of that you, the people, must be fixed and corrected and nudged and whipped into shape, because they don't very much like you. And you are not just guilty of your own many, many sins. You are also guilty of the sins of your ancestors. You're white and privileged. You're a man and privileged. You're responsible in some small way for slavery and the sins of the Catholic Church and the sins of everyone who came before you. And if you are not oppressed, you're nobody. That is the worldview that seems to dominate the country, that the people are a constant disappointment to the people who govern us. How has this been allowed to happen? How has that divide grown so big? I blame Niamh Bhreathnach. Niamh Bhreathnach, of course, introduced free third-level education in 1994, and education is good. But what we've seen in the years since then is the emergence of somebody I call the useless graduate. The useless graduate with no real hard skills. And by the way, I'm a useless graduate. Arts degree right here. But not an engineer, not a doctor, not a scientist, but they got a degree in sociology or they got a degree in whatever. And those people need jobs. And it is no surprise, therefore, that the third sector of the economy, the NGO sector, has exploded since 1994, to the extent that it is now an €8 billion behemoth. It is the common agricultural policy for Dublin 4. And it is an entire sector of the economy that is by definition and design useless. Think about it. This is a sector of the economy that by definition can never solve the problems that it is set up to solve. Can't do it. What happens to the Irish Network Against Racism if racism disappears. Bye-bye. And it cannot succeed by definition. And that is why, for example, the hate speech bill that we're here today to discuss, news for you folks, it cannot succeed. They will implement this thing, and they will find in a year that hatred is still with us, and that it must still be protested, and that more people must be locked up, because they are definitionally set up to fail. When the NGO sector solves one problem, it creates 3 more by design. Just look at the abortion referendum, for example. Solve the problem of Irish women being oppressed, but oh no, there's 3 more, because now we need safe access zones, now there's an issue with contraception, now we have to reform sex education. The problems are always set up to grow this one sector of the economy and to bring in more funding. Look at the immigration issue, for example. The immigration issue is an economic boon to that sector of the economy, because you are bringing in more and more people who need more and more advocates. Not actually that they need houses or that they need support on the ground, but they need more advocates. They need more funding for anti-racism activism. They need more funding for their inclusion programs. They need more funding. And it becomes a massive jobs program, which coincidentally fuels the massively expanding women's studies department in UCD or the sociology department. It is, that is, I think, what we really have to get to the heart of. They call it progressivism because it means progressively more funding. When you look at this issue of free speech and what it's about, and this is the other thing I want to say, it is not targeted. I know a lot of people in this room probably feel it's targeted at them. We are, after all, here all people of strong convictions and firm opinions. I presume that's why most of you are here. You didn't just wander in off the street. But you're not really the targets, because people like us, we know how to communicate, we know how to speak, and we know how to say the things we mean without resorting to the kind of language that gets us in trouble. We're all smart enough for that. You're not the target. The people who are the target are the people who aren't here today, the normal people, because what this is about, fundamentally, is about creating a safe space around certain opinions where the normal person feels more and more reticent about saying things that are not, in inverted commas, respectable. This should really be called the respectable speech law, because that is what it's about. It is about putting into law the idea that some people's political beliefs are fundamentally disrespectful and disrespectable, and if you are a careful and decent person, then you would never think certain things. And that is, unfortunately, a notion that is deeply ingrained in Irish society and has been deeply ingrained in Irish society for many generations, respectability. It is one of the reasons why families brought their daughters to institutions when they fell pregnant, because it was the respectable thing to do. And if you can weaponize that respectability, if you can turn people to the idea that some groups of people, the hated far right, are simply not respectable, then you don't ever need to engage with them on the merits of the argument. And so you can have an event today in Merrion Square where one side is making arguments and the other side is screaming abuse, and the side screaming abuse get to call themselves respectable. They're not. They're the furthest thing from respectable. This week, Paul Murphy, we love Paul Murphy, he gives us, seriously, nobody is better on a slow news day at Gript than Paul Murphy. Sometimes I come onto the call every morning. And if ever there is no news, you can rely on the fact that Paul Murphy will say something stupid by lunchtime. But this week, this advocate for restricting your speech doxed a school child belonging to a journalist he didn't like who reported a story he didn't like. He outed that school child in a classroom, which is, I think, just about the most despicable, reckless use of free speech I've seen from an elected representative in my lifetime. And he has the gall to call us fascist. I didn't hear that. I'm sure something else was like, look, we all know why we're here, we all know why this is so important, but I would argue that it's in a bigger context. As a society, we need to fight back against this idea that there is a class of people who govern us that know better than we do about how we should live our own lives. We need to fundamentally be a little bit more libertarian in our outlook, because that is what's needed to challenge this nonsense across society, because it should not be a crime to say that there are two sexes. It should not be a crime to say that national borders can be enforced. It should not be a crime to say that you believe in God and all the things that come with that. And if we allow that to become a crime, then we are lost, which is why I'm delighted you're all here today. And I thank you so much for coming, and I ask you for your continued support for Gript and Free Speech Ireland and the work both organisations do. Thank you.